have the 15 there, then that should be our target for this year. But we continue to engage India. It's, it's different. India not yet joining compared to the US leaving TPP. It's a totally different outcome. India not yet joining has a framework in ASEAN called -X. It's not something new. It has been, the precedent was the ASEAN-Korea FTA, where Thailand and Korea couldn't agree on rice, so Thailand didn't come on board until they were able to sort out their issue on rice, and then I think Thailand came on about 2 years later, and there were some other examples. So it's not something that hasn't happened before, and it's not something that we can manage as a process. It's very different from the US leaving TPP. They would have to renegotiate to come back in. So I think we're in good shape, we're in a good neighborhood, we're in good shape, and I really hope that ASEAN can continue its leadership, the political will, and the ASEAN Secretariat obviously plays a very, very key role in making sure that all these issues are lined up, the processes are there, and talking to the ministers, talking to the leaders to make sure that everybody can converge on this very important outcome. I think I'm going to be watching afar from DC, but I think my heart is still in ASEAN. I still think ASEAN is one of the most maybe unrecognized regional stories. A lot of other regions, I think, are very envious of how much progress we've made here. And sometimes when we're here, we always tend to be very pessimistic of centrality of ASEAN, relevance of ASEAN, where is it? We tend to be a little bit doom and gloom, but I think we have a lot going for us. And let's be optimistic that this process can continue and that we can deliver a very, very strong message at the end of the year with the ratification of RCEP. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to ask questions, answer questions on anything you want.
Sound check. Thank you, Kumari. Colleagues, usually as moderator, I would exercise my right to ask the first two questions, but in the interest of time, I want to throw this open immediately. Because I know a lot of you are looking across the room. I think a lot of you are from the ASEAN Economic Community Department. So please feel free to shoot your first question. DSG Michael. Please give the moving mic to DSG, please.
Thank you, Bayan. Thank you, Iman. I have two questions. First, you talked about, you mentioned about the decoupling between the US and China. How far do you think this process will go through? If it's carried out to that extent, whether we have to be concerned of the emergence of the global economic order as happened back during the Cold War era, East and West, totally different from one another. The second question is about the race of Asia that you mentioned also. Does it necessarily mean greater integration and greater reliance on China and India, and where does it leave the small and medium economies in Asia? Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, for your question. I think there will never be a total decoupling because the economies are too integrated. But it will go through a lot of tensions, and maybe you will see reduced trade and reduced investment, for instance. And maybe what China will do is try to invest more in the US, but then there's now also a bit of a pushback from the US or China to invest in certain sectors, for instance. So I think what will happen is a more diversification on both sides. But at the end of the day, I don't think they can totally decouple because the economies are just too integrated. But there will still be a lot of tensions ahead. And I think what we are worried about, what a lot of us should be worried a lot about, is the technology competition issue. Because right now, if it's just trade and tariffs, you kind of just shift your sourcing, and what will happen this year, we don't know, because if China is the next 2 years, China has to buy $200 billion worth of goods from the US, right? What does that mean? Like, take something like soybeans. They take 19% or something like that from the US, but they actually take like 30% from Brazil. So if they shift what they bought from Brazil to the US, then you will see Brazil having problems, right? And say, for us, somebody did this analysis as to which product and which country would be hurt. For us, it's actually coal and LNG. So if they have to buy coal and LNG from the US, then Australia and Indonesia would be the ones hurt, right? And then what will happen to us? We also have to find ways to diversify our market, or China will compensate us with some other products. So it's really going to disrupt trade. And a lot of people say it's unrealistic to think that China can, I think it amounts to like more than doubling their imports from the US, which is kind of impossible, right? And so I think it's, going back to the technology competition issue, what we worry about, and I've been in many meetings where we talk about this, what happens if you not only have like trade zones coming out from this tension, but you end up having to choose the technology zone that you're part of. Are you part of the Huawei technology zone, or whatever the other competition is going to be? It's not clear, because the development of 5G is still not clear on the other side. So that's the other worry. And so far, because of the spread of the technology already and the cost, if you're going to be forced to switch the use of your technology, who's going to pay for the cost? Is the US going to pay for the cost for you to switch to another technology? And you have all these kind of very, very complex issues, and then it's linked to many security issues and other issues. So this is really one of the big issues that we are facing, things being linked to each other and things not being dealt with multilaterally. And I think that's a real fear. Your second question was what will happen to middle-income countries. Well, I think as long as, I think if you look at the rise of China, they are already not competitive in the labor-intensive manufacturing anymore because of demographic, because of higher wages. And they're increasingly getting into services now. So I think there's actually going to be a reconfiguration of the global value chain. And that's actually where middle-income countries can enter. And we just need to figure out which part of this new configuration of the global value chain we can be specializing in and be part of and continue to grow, right? To graduate or to grow. And that's really the big challenge for countries, the more medium-sized countries. And again, at the end of the day, it is about keeping trade and investment open and doing your domestic reforms at home, right? To make sure that you are going to be attracting the right type of investment, developing your human resources, dealing with your, Indonesia always comes out not so good on the logistics side, therefore we are not part of the global value chain. So you have to address the impediments that are not making us part of the global value chain. A lot of it has to do with the efficiency of goods coming in and out, and increasingly the technological transformation, people and data, right? And those are things that countries need to do reforms on. But I think we should always remember the importance of ASEAN. The importance of ASEAN in the past, and I think now and in the future, is that whenever we have a commitment in ASEAN, it helps us to do our domestic homework, right? So take something like data flows. If we can, we are already talking about that in ASEAN. If we can get an agreement on that in ASEAN, it's going to help us internalize that into our domestic policy before we have to face like the more global discussion on this. Training ground. ASEAN is the training ground.
Thank you. I just want to also acknowledge the presence of Pia Kasmangati and Kok Mimpin from Brunei and Singapore respectively. Thank you, Pia. By the way, just wanted to remind everybody that we are live on Facebook, and we also invite our netizens, those who are on Facebook, to comment or submit good questions that you can also ask. Yes, Pia Libet.
Thank you. Thank you, Yo-Yo, and thank you, Ibu Mari, for very thoughtful and incisive analysis. Can I ask what you think we should do to increase intra-ASEAN trade? We have grown, we have benefited from the growth of our trading partners. We have learned a lot and we have inserted ourselves into global value chains. But with the amount of disruption in trade patterns and also in trade in goods and services, the 4IR, as well as sustainable consumption patterns, where do you think, what do you think are our strengths, and how can we grow our own internal market so that we can increase our resilience amidst future geopolitical and geoeconomic disruptions? My second question is, we are now reviewing our current ASEAN community building goals, which we are supposed to complete by 2025. And some of us are also starting to think about post-2025 goals. Would you care to perhaps suggest one or two that we should focus on so that we're not just too caught up in the implementation today? Thank you.
Yes, your first question on increasing intra-ASEAN trade. I think, unfortunately, the answer is still the one traditional answer. Maybe the others are not traditional answer. We have to deal with the NTMs. It's still a homework, ongoing homework, let's say. And I think that requires a lot of hard work and political will. And maybe, I still remember when I was Minister of Trade, I was very diligent as a Minister of Trade. So I said, okay, you have to do this as part of the ASEAN single window take. Okay, we have the national single window take. And there is one there that actually says we are supposed to report all our NTMs and explain them, and also, in fact, before you implement them, you are supposed to share it, right? Something along those lines. So we actually developed a system that anytime any ministry wants to ask for an NTM, because the Ministry of Trade is the one that comes up with the NTMs, then there has to be a process, just like when you request for tariffs, right? So we have that all in place, but I think I don't think it's implemented in that way yet. So I think these are some of the homework that still remains, unfortunately. Yeah? And I think we should not give up. We should continue to highlight. And I think there's been lots of studies done on this. And I think the Indonesian government is actually very aware of this, because I think JETRO's investment report of 2018 showed that the number one issue for Indonesia was NTMs. In terms of why it's affecting the investment climate and exports. So I think that's part of all this deregulation that the government is trying to do. But that's still one homework, and probably standards. I think having agreement on standards, because I think we are beginning to see NTMs standards, if it's for safety, for mainly food safety and all these legitimate reasons. then it's fine. But the moment you start having standards which are actually there not for those reasons, then you start having issues, right? So I think that's the other issue. And even if you want to agree on like consumer protection, you should be discussing it as ASEAN. And then eventually, and probably already happening now, on sustainability standards, right? Apparently there's so many so-called sustainability standards around. A lot of them are not created by anybody, but by kind of groups. I think somebody did a study and they came up with something like 17,000 so-called sustainability standards. So I think we need to come together as ASEAN to come up also with an agreement on what constitutes sustainable products. Because that will be, and it should be in line with whatever the international markets are going to go for. The final thing I would add, and this is kind of something which I know is already being talked about in the digital ASEAN context. I think if we could have e-commerce does help trades and it helps the SMEs a lot, right? So if we could actually develop well the ASEAN platform for e-commerce, and that has a lot to do with taxation, with customs, with payments. Yeah, having the payment system. You want to be able to go to any other country and be able to use your Grab app or your GoCar app. I'm just going to mention the ASEAN-based e-commerce platforms. And we have Shopee, we have Tokopedia. These are all hopefully platforms that can actually go across ASEAN. And that would make us in size significantly enough, I think, to compete with the Alibabas and the Amazons. Instead of being taken over by Alibaba and Amazon. And what is interesting about each of these platforms, I sort of watched Shopee and maybe GoCar a little bit. You localize, right? You cannot just take an Alibaba or a GoCar app and then just put it in another country. A lot of localization. It starts from the language, it starts from the abbreviations that we use, the kind of consumer behavior. You have to localize every time you go to a country. And I think this is where these ASEAN-based commerce companies actually have an advantage over the Alibabas or the Amazons, because you have to go local. And once you go local, can we really have ASEAN e-commerce platform? And that I think payments is an important part of it, to make it seamless, right? And I think that could increase intra-ASEAN trade also. Second question was a more big question. I think we always talk about the kind of the 4 pillars. Used to be 3 pillars, right? It's 5 pillars. Went from 4 to 5, right? And I always think that the equitable ASEAN part is, the kind of the strong pillar is the trade investment and regional production base and single market kind of pillar. All the other pillars are still very weak, yeah? And that's, I think, where the attention should be. And I think it should be more about the equitable ASEAN. I think equitable ASEAN sounds nice in words, but how can you actually achieve broad-based inclusive growth in ASEAN? Those are also nice words, but how do you actually achieve that? And a lot of that is about each country's efforts to do it, but what can ASEAN do to contribute to that? And you go back to the 3rd pillar of any regional agreement. You always have the liberalization and facilitation, and then the economic, technical cooperation and capacity building. I think that 3rd pillar is actually the one that we need to really strengthen to make sure that you're going to have less disparity between countries and within countries. Like a big country like Indonesia, there's a lot of disparity within country. And I think infrastructure, whether it's hard or soft, connectivity, is still a very, very important part of ensuring that you can reduce the disparity. Right? And I think on the issue of infrastructure, I would add sustainability in there. Because now that I've been doing a lot of work on sustainable development, and one should not see sustainability and development as trade-offs. You should see it as being able to achieve both. So if you're going to build infrastructure for development, why don't you build sustainable infrastructure? Right? So you need to be able to come to an agreement on what does a sustainable infrastructure mean, right? And then be able to measure it. Actually, this is a lot of the discussion about achieving both is about how do we come up with projects that actually have an economic integration outcome. That would be my call. Can we as ASEAN apply to Belt and Road funding that has an economic integration outcome, which will reduce the disparity between the participating countries. It's green, it's sustainable because it will reduce CO2 emission by XXX. It will increase it will have social impact, it will have job creation, etc., etc. But it should be real and it should be monitored. So I think those are probably some ideas for kind of future vision.
In ASEAN, we call it the narrowing of the development gaps,
Yes.
the MDGs, which is we have a specialized unit in the markets. So, point taken. Any other questions, colleagues? Your last chance to ask the designated MD of World Bank. Mega.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm Mega from the Secretariat. I have 2 questions. First, we noted that in the new generation of FTAs, there are new issues emerging, especially labor and environment. I would like to know your perspective on the prospect of ASEAN to come up with a common position with regard to the inclusion of the new issues of labor and also environment in the FTAs. Secondly, touching upon your last point regarding the inclusive development, I think we are always so proud of the robust economic growth of ASEAN, but at the same time we know in our backyards we have the issue of human resources development. Our education attainment rates are still concerning at the tertiary level. At the secondary level, not as high as we wanted. So amidst of this technological disruption and also automation, there is this global concern on how we prepare ourselves for the future of work. What is your perspective in terms of the prospect of ASEAN human resources to embrace the future of work? Because this is very important for the sustainability of our economic growth.
Okay, about inclusion of new issues such as environment and labor, I think by now, since we already have those issues in some of our agreements anyway, I think it's not as septic as before. And on environment, I think we should begin to have principles of environment in the agreement, such as you don't want to go to the lowest common denominator, for instance. In investment, countries should adhere to the minimum standard of environment for investment projects. Things like that, I think, are certainly now more accepted in trade agreements. And I'm not sure about climate change, how much of that should be in trade agreements. It should probably be a separate cooperation between the ASEAN countries on how much commitment collectively they would like to make in order to contribute to the climate change. On labor, I think in the past we have always looked at ILO, as long as we all adhere to ILO. And do we want to add more? Like, do we want to add ILO plus standards to our agreements? I think that would be the other issue. And perhaps in ASEAN, the issue of labor movement, migration, immigration, which has in the past always tended to be bilateral, right? Or whether you want to take one step further and make it more ASEAN agreement. Like you can have an agreement on many things, minimum standards for foreign workers or whatever it is to protect workers. So I think these are some of the issues that we could be thinking of moving forward for environment and labor. But I do think we are by now open to have those in the agreements. The human resources, human resources and facing technological transformation is the issue of the day for all governments, advanced countries, developing countries. And the problem is, I think most people don't really know where things are moving. So it is more about how do we have the type of education and training that is ongoing, right? People talk about this lifelong learning because you never know when you're going to be obsolete or what you know is going to be obsolete. So you almost have to be continuously learning and have the access and the opportunity to be able to continue to learn. So there's a lot of thinking about how do you reformulate or reform education and the delivery of education and skills training so that you can be more responsive to different needs. And also that I think a lot of times it is about in the education field, how are you being taught so that you have the basic skills, but you also have the skill to be agile so that you are not, you can be moved to many different types of occupations and tasks more easily if you're agile. Because that is really what happens when you have this technological transformation. So it is again the way of teaching and education. And in Indonesia, I think on the human resources side, it's not just about the teaching and the education. And we have to also make sure that from young, that they are, this is the stunting problem. I think it's still about 25% in Indonesia. So the cognitive ability, which is linked to health, nutrition, clean sanitation, this is equally part of the, and even pollution, right? The productivity of our human resources is not just a question of education. It is also about the total well-being of the human resources, and that a lot of that has to do with how much they give. Their health is an important part of it, and health is a function of nutrition, food, lifestyle, pollution, etc. So this has become, I think, the big issue, and that's why when again going back to sustainable development, the issue about development and sustainability, there's a body of work done by the New Planet Economy, and Indonesia is the first country to have a model that can actually show that if you do nothing, business as usual, that means you don't reduce your CO2 emission. What will happen is that your growth goes from 5% maybe for the next 5-8 years, and then it starts going down to below 5%. And that's because your productivity goes down related to pollution, your human capital, and your natural capital gets eroded, etc., etc. So I think this is something, it's a more medium-term, long-term issue, but again, ASEAN should pay attention to that. I always say, don't wait till you have protests like you have in Beijing before you really pay serious attention to your climate change commitments, because until it becomes a political issue, most policymakers just have a 5-year timeline. They're not about, okay, 5 years, still growing at 5%, that's fine, right? They're not going to be there when it goes down to 3%. And this is, how do you make this get into the politicians' agenda, I think is the big challenge.
Any other questions? If not, I will ask a question from Facebook. We received a question from Facebook. Yeah. We received a question from Facebook, that to sum it up, this question is about, you mentioned about climate change, and that there's a need to continue to spend on infrastructure. The person who posed this question on Facebook was asking that even for a small country like Singapore, they cannot fight climate change. There's still flooding in Orchard Road and population growth, MRT will break down. And it is estimated by a World Bank study that even a small country like Singapore need about 133 billion USD to spend on public infrastructure, to cater for the growth and to fight climate change. The question he asked, and I think this person is from Indonesia. What more can, for a country that big like Indonesia, what else can they do to fight climate change? Nobody can fight climate change. Singapore, for whatever you say as an advanced economy, need to spend so much. What more, a country like Indonesia and those lower income countries like the newer countries, what can they do?
Well, perhaps the question is related to the cost, right? Yes, the cost of dealing with climate change is huge. So what is needed is that it doesn't have to all come from government. It should come also from private sector. World Bank actually, I think, has already a lot of this is the trend now. Yeah? In the last 2 or 3 years, it's become very, very clear. All the multilaterals, including the World Bank, IFC, they will only lend to projects which are clearly sustainable. And then you have to have the metrics to show that it is sustainable. And that often allows crowding in of private sector money to come in on top of the multilaterals or grants. They call this blended finance. But what is key is actually for that to happen is for the country to have a very clear policy on what their framework is for climate change. For instance, like Europe, they have banned, they clearly have a renewable energy target. They're reducing coal and using other sources. Or electric car. Both Europe and China, they have targets for electric car. China also has put a cap on their coal-fired power plants. So you know that any new power generation has to be non-coal, and that's clearly a government policy, right? And it's in the long term, right? Because power plants infrastructure it's a long-term project. So they have to be clear on the long-term policy. So Indonesia, countries like Indonesia, need to have a clear long-term policy on what they intend to do on the different dimensions of sectors or systems that have an impact on climate change, like peatland, for instance. Studies have shown that peatland restoration will cost about $10 billion, but it will absorb 4 times more carbon than forest, right? So you can actually either get private sector to come in, or you can sell off as carbon credit. There are a lot of kind of private sector financing instruments that are coming out now. And the private sector and the investors are another dimension that will put pressure. Because a lot of banks now, Standard Chartered will not lend to coal-fired power plants. A lot of investment funds, pension funds also will not lend to unsustainable projects. Then you have consumers, that's another pressure point. And the final pressure point is people working in your company. If you want to attract good talent, then nowadays they will only go and work for companies that they also think are sustainable companies. So I think you need to have all these things happen at the same time, but Indonesia is probably only at the beginning of that process.
Somebody wants to question? Yeah, Tom.
Thank you. Working again.
Check. Okay.
Good afternoon, Ibu.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Ibu. Hope you still recognize me. My question is related to the multilateral trade system. We ASEAN believe in the WTO multilateral trade system, and we benefit from a strong WTO. But WTO is now facing a very big challenge due to Trump, due to the US, in terms of effectiveness and efficiency and relevance. So, and we want in ASEAN to make WTO strong again.
So my question is, what can we do collectively in ASEAN to help with the process of reforming the WTO and to make it strong and relevant again in our benefit? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I do remember you saw Vietnam, right? Yes, it's a good question. I still haven't given up. Most people think I should give up on WTO, but I haven't given up on WTO because I do think, people think, oh yeah, let's give up. US doesn't support it. But believe me, if you had to reinvent the WTO, you would never do something like that any time soon. So you should be, I think as much as possible, we need to work hard to continue to push the envelope in terms of what can we do to keep on the pressure for taking steps to do WTO reform. G20 is one avenue, and I think Vietnam is the chair of ASEAN this year, so they get a seat at the table. Indonesia does have WTO reform as one of the things they have proposed last year in the G20 of Japan. They provided a non-paper on WTO reforms, which was well accepted, except for one member. But it was tabled, and it is, if you read the G20 trade ministers statement as well as the G20 leaders statement, it's in there. It is about, I think, something to do with, okay, we need to reform the WTO to make it relevant. So everybody agrees on that. But what the reform that needs to be done, actually we did manage to get dispute settlement mentioned in there, because that's the number one priority. By now, it's already expired. No more appellate court judges left, right? But then, second best option is to continue with the system of that existed before the WTO, which is going back to GATT. Or you can, this is, nobody dares to do this, is to go on. There's nothing in the agreement that says you need a consensus to select the judges. So you could actually go and select the judges without consensus. But then, it would lead to other issues. So I think we need to just continue to make sure that, I think dispute settlement is the number one issue, short-term issue, urgent issue. And then you should be looking at what are the issues that need to be dealt with in the WTO. E-commerce is probably the next one, because there is already an idea to have a plurilateral agreement on e-commerce, and I believe all the ASEAN countries are signatories. I know Indonesia signed on in December. How about the Philippines? I don't know about the Philippines. I think last year only Philippines and Indonesia had not signed on. Even Cambodia had signed on. So if all the ASEAN countries sign on to the e-commerce agreement under WTO, then that's something that ASEAN could come together as a region. That's already what's already on the table. What's not on the table yet is things like industrial subsidies, IPR, state-owned enterprises. So I would tackle subsidies next and put it as a bucket. Call it subsidies, don't call it industrial subsidies, because we still haven't dealt with agriculture subsidies. Subsidies can only be dealt with multilaterally. It can't be dealt with regionally or unilaterally or bilaterally. So I think subsidies, put it as an agenda. Start with agriculture, fisheries. These are two already being negotiated. And then you have industrial in there as well. I mean that's what we have been proposing in the WTO non-paper. And this year under G20 Saudi Arabia, we're also going to do the same thing. So any input from ASEAN Secretariat on the issue of WTO reforms are welcome. It's sort of a question, how do you keep on pushing? Unfortunately, the WTO Ministers meeting is very soon, it's in June. I'm not sure what will happen there, but maybe at the minimum they will say something on the e-commerce agreement. Maybe that's, in my mind, I cannot really think of any other outcomes. I'm not sure they can do anything on this settlement. But let's target the next 2 years. And that Indonesia is going to be the host of G20 and ASEAN into 2023, right? So I think the next 3 years, actually ASEAN can play, I think we talked about this, because so many things happening in ASEAN. You have Malaysia, APEC and Malaysia this year, Vietnam, chair of ASEAN. And then next year, what's happening next year? 2021 is, who's chair of ASEAN? Brunei. But I think something else is happening here apart from ASEAN. Something happening? I had the list before. ASEAN? And then 2022, India is hosting G20. And I guess it will be Cambodia hosting ASEAN. And APEC, I think APEC is going to New Zealand next year. Yeah, so it's still in the region. And then after that, Thailand. Yeah, that's right. 2022 Thailand. So everything is happening in ASEAN or RCEP countries. So I think this is something we need to, as I was saying earlier, let's not look for new platforms. Let's build on existing platforms to push the reform, the WTO, as well as continuing the process of opening up in ASEAN and RCEP. And then Asia will, in 2023, be the host of ASEAN and G20. So, you have all these things being lined up. Remember, to me, ASEAN is always, you can't sort of say, okay, here's the target, here's what we're going to do. Process. The process is so important in ASEAN. So just look at this as the process that we have ahead of us, and how do we build on each one of it, and build on some of the core issues of ASEAN, like trade, but also some of the other issues like human capital, like climate change, which will be, climate change to me is very key, but how do we, what is our regional cooperation agenda on it?
Sorry, I have time for one more question. Any colleagues? Yen, you want to ask?
Thank you very much, Professor, for your very comprehensive presentation. My question is particular to the Indonesian case. I think the development of ASEAN is dependent on the development of each member state. How do you think, how positive you think the path ahead of ASEAN? Because I would like to recall, even those that have a lot of potential from the free trade era, particularly coming out of the ASEAN Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. But when you look back at the time when we had the first protocol to amend the ASEAN, Australia and New Zealand free trade agreement, it was signed in 2014, but it took almost 5 years for Indonesia to fully rectify the first protocol, which is defined as all assessment is very simple provision, very simple amendments in terms of rule origin. So I want to ask, how positive you think the ASEAN if it is signed, how long it will take Indonesia to rectify it? That's the first question. The second question is, in retrospect, how do you think the development of Indonesia trade policy compared with the time when you were Minister of Trade? Is it like progressive, or there's some setback? I would like to hear a candid assessment.
Well, I know ratification goes through Parliament, and that's something relatively new because of the, I think, the law, the trade law. When we, unfortunately, I was not the one who passed the trade law, but under the new trade law, the ratification does have to go through Parliament, and going through Parliament is never easy. So I think, but I do think the commitment is there. there's a lot of backlog as far as I know for ratification. Maybe not just Indonesia, but in general. But I think if someone could actually make a list and kind of make it more publicly known, it's something that you kind of set as a target maybe and say, okay, we are committed to ratifying our agreements, and I think we just ratified the Australia-Indonesia FTA, and that was fairly quick, but because there was this political commitment to have it completed. So we need to make sure if we want to have the ratification process completed, we need to raise it up to the political commitment. And I think this does need to be done and highlighted. But I really can't tell you how that will be done or how much we can actually push. Maybe for the big agreements like free trade agreements, I think that would be prioritized. Say like RCEP, if we have to ratify that in Parliament, I would think that's a priority because I do know the President puts a lot of priority on RCEP. On your second question, I don't think I'm the right one to answer that. I think you have to ask an objective analyst to answer that. But of course, it's not a fair comparison either because the times that we are living now is so much more difficult and challenging compared to when I was trade minister. I happened to be in the good times during the commodity boom. So when I was trade minister, the exports went up from 60 billion to 200 billion, right, 3 times. But that has nothing to do with me being the Minister of Trade. It had everything to do with the commodity boom. But we tried hard, of course, to create the right kind of trade policy and investment policy. So I think you better ask somebody else to answer your question.
Yes, it's curious.
Let's ask question.
It's a curious question. I think we all know that by default, Indonesia is like the leader of ASEAN. So the question in our mind is, what do you see as the role of Indonesia in pushing ASEAN through all of these processes?
Indonesia, of course, has always, in different ways, played a leadership role, and I believe we will continue to do so. And I do know that the President, the Foreign Ministry, and the Trade Ministry, obviously, they do prioritize ASEAN and RCEP now as priorities. So I do think leadership is there, and don't forget we're going to be the chair in 2023. So I think leading up to that, we will also hopefully continue our role. And I do believe that every time we have been chair, we have also always tried to make the next big leap for ASEAN. Like in 2011, actually, when we chaired ASEAN, that was the next big leap was actually RCEP, and then it took this long to get it to an agreement. So in 2023, I think we also will have the challenge of what's going to be the next big change for ASEAN. In 2003, the ASEAN community, Bali Concord. Yeah. So, I think we have always tried collectively, not just by ourselves, to play this role. And I would hope that this time around also we can play the same role.
Thank you. Romeo, we are giving you one chance to ask because Ibu Mari is very kind. Next time, no more questions for Nancy. I see no more hands, and like I say, I really want to conclude this because this is Valentine's Day, 1. And 2, I promised Ibu Mari that I will end by 5 o'clock. Okay? I don't even dare or try somehow, whatever she has shared, I think I probably won't do the justification. But I think there are a few notable things that we can take away from here. That 1, ASEAN is in a very good neighborhood, and there is no need for us to look for new platforms. Everybody want to make friends with us. We are very well represented in international platforms like the G20 and other arenas. And there's really no need for us to choose between US and China, because I think the world is big enough, or the Pacific is big enough to have both and to be friends with ASEAN. So in short, I think ASEAN has what it takes to stay relevant in an increasingly multipolar economic world, as per the topic. And all we need is really to continue to stay together, stay open, and be well plugged into the global system. So I think this is what I can summarize. Amy, I hope I do justification move to your very good presentation.
You get an A.
And with that, can I have your, can you all have a lot of applause for you?
I just want to, this is actually my last public speaking act as a private independent person. I will be assuming my new appointment on March 2nd, and I will be in charge of development policy and partnerships. So I'm very much looking forward to partnerships with the ASEAN Secretariat. I think there's many things that we can be partnering together with. And I will also be doing external relations. I'm not just the World Bank come to ASEAN meetings. Sometimes, if they're invited, I guess. So I will be representing the World Bank externally, and I'm also in charge of overseeing the 4 global practices: human capital, sustainable development, infrastructure, and what they call FE, which is economic inequality and institutions. It's all the economic mainstream issues anyway. And as you know, the World Bank is focusing a lot on poverty alleviation and broad-based development, inclusive growth. A lot of it is on Africa, and I think Africa, they really want to learn how the economic integration is happening in this part of the world and how that can be relevant for Africa's development. So I think maybe that's one of the reasons why they selected me, so I can come bring the Asian view. But thank you, Sekjen, thank you, Yung, thank you everybody, and even though I'm in DC, my heart is in Indonesia and in ASEAN. So don't forget me, and I will be back, hopefully with more knowledge and
Can I have the next set of events? SG, can I invite you to give away a token of appreciation to you? We are giving away a flower for August reason because today is Valentine's Day. We have one more token of appreciation that we hope to keep Ibu Mari warm in Washington. It is an ASEAN brand shawl. Yeah. In the
It's from Cambodia.
you can sell it away.
It's artisanal form. An ASEAN brand.
Can I ask that both of you stay on stage? Can I also request for the PRs and DSGs and representative of the working groups to come forward?
So thank you very much, Painu, for your excellent moderation of this dialogue. And of course, thank you to Ibu Marie for sharing your thoughts and your very optimistic message to us, especially on this topic. And that brings to a close this 5th edition of the ASEC Dialogue Series. I'd like to thank you all for coming, and I just ask you to please remain seated while SG, Ibu Marie, and the rest of our VIP guests make their way out of the Dialogue. And thank you for coming to this Valentine's Day edition of the ASEC Dialogue Series. Please help yourself with our refreshment, which they're served here at the Moore Tower foyer. Please grab something or spend some time with someone. It's Valentine's Day. Have a drink and some snacks outside of it. See you again next time. And again, thank you very much for coming to this ASEC Dialogue Series.
Different.